For years, I carried a really deep fear, not necessarily for myself, but definitely for the people that I loved. It all started at Vacation Bible School when I was 7 years old. That's the first time I ever heard about hell and how that we would go there if we didn't say this special prayer. That fear shaped so many of my life choices. In this video, I want to share what I've discovered and why I believe that fear was never meant to be the message of Jesus. They had this special contest at the Vacation Bible School where you got so many points for bringing a friend or for memorizing a verse or for bringing a Bible, and I ended up winning that contest, which gave me a really cool leather-bound Bible with gold edges on it, had my name on it. I remember looking back as a teenager and thinking how grateful I was that that Vacation Bible School happened, because my family all started going to church after that. You see, before that, I remember my grandpa across the driveway always having his brothers over, and my dad would go join them, and they would sit out in the garage and drink beer and smoke cigarettes and have their music up loud, and they get a little bit rowdy. And I remember being really bothered by that because of the things that I was learning in church. I really felt like I was the spiritual leader of the house. You know, not that my dad didn't go to church, but I was really the one that initiated it, the one that made it important, that constantly reminded the family that, hey, we need to go to church. I was excited to go, but looking back, I can see just how much fear actually drove that. I'll never forget going to Bible camp. Every night there would be a special service with a preacher, and I remember just always feeling like I had to get to the altar and make sure that I was right, because even though I said that prayer, I didn't want to take any chances. I would sit at that altar and cry and pray and just pray for me and pray for my family, and you know, I really took it seriously as a kid. Then, as if I didn't take it seriously enough, when I was 17, I was going to a new church, and this pastor took us, there was probably 5 or 6 of us, he took us to this event called Acquire the Fire, and it was such an amazing event, and the message was so powerful that I just knew that, you know, if there had been any doubt in my mind that God was real and what I was supposed to do, that weekend, it was a Friday, Saturday, Sunday, that weekend just set it in stone for me. When I left Acquire the Fire at 17, I became an unstoppable Christian. I remember whenever I got back from that event, how on fire I was to, you know, spread the gospel that much more, and I was inviting other kids to my youth group, and the youth group the church was actually way out in the country, and so it was really hard to get anybody there. And I remember my pastor, he was putting a lot of pressure on me to, hey, get some more kids in here, get some more kids. Well, I'm inviting everybody I can, but I worked at a place where this guy kept inviting me to his church. Well, I already had a church, so I didn't necessarily want to go, but he just kept on talking about their youth group, and I decided one day to go check it out. Well, when I got there was like probably 30 or 40 teenagers at this youth group, and it was so fun that I remember thinking, this is the place that I belong. I was only at that church for maybe 5 or 6 weeks before they had a vote to see who would be the new president of the youth group. I'm not even sure who the president of the youth group was before me, because I was new to the group, but I was voted almost unanimously. I think maybe there was one vote for, maybe it was the former guy, I don't remember exactly, but it was nearly unanimous, because I remember every single time we would have youth group, when the teacher or youth pastor would ask a question or whatever, like, I always had an answer, because I always read my Bible and I was on top of it. I just felt unstoppable, and that came across in my youth group. After that, those youth pastors started taking me to different events. Like, I remember them taking me to something, it was a youth leader symposium or something like that, where we learned how to build our youth group better so that we would be more attractive to outside kids and try to grow that. And I remember taking that so seriously, trying to help them build that youth group. and save as many kids as possible. Those two are so dear to my heart, and I still think about them all the time. They were such sweet people that they really made me want to be a youth pastor. And so a few years later, whenever I was an adult and was married and I had a kid of my own, I had my earlier pastor had called me and asked me what I was up to and invited me to come talk about being his youth pastor. So I decided to take him up on that, and I became a youth pastor. I was a youth pastor for about 5 years. I remember starting with a group of about 7 kids, and it didn't take us long until we were up over 100. That was really exciting. I'm not even sure how many kids that I stood at the altar with and prayed with and made sure that they were going to get to go to heaven. I spent so many years focused on that. I remember I worked at a boat factory and I had a little notebook with me because I was always thinking of sermon notes, and I would run over in between boats and write down a few things because it was hugely important. Looking back, I wonder how many of those teenagers grew up and still think about hell and still remember the things that I taught them. You know, I wonder how much fear they're actually living with today because of what I taught. Then in 2007, oh man, probably the best year of my life as far as making a change and changing my outlook and setting me on a new path. Such an amazing year. I'll never forget, I came home from work and my first wife was giving a haircut to one of the ladies from our church, and she was actually the youth pastor. And I remember running in and seeing her and saying, "Oh, Kim, I'm so thankful that you're here because I want to talk to you. I mean, we just started going to this church and I was a youth pastor before, and I don't want you to think that I want to take over your position or anything like that, but I want you to know that I'm here to help because we got to save these kids from hell." I mean, at that point, I had been taught that 92% of Christians get saved before they're 20, and in the United States of America, at least at that time, we were only reaching 4% of teenagers. That meant that 96% of teenagers would turn 20, and if they hadn't been saved, well, there was then a 92% chance that they weren't going to. So it was very important that we get these kids saved. And I came home and saw Kim there, and I had to talk to her about that. And I'll never forget, she said, "Well, Steve, I'm glad you brought that up because there's something that I've been wanting to talk to you about for a while." I said, "Okay, well, let's have it." And then I remember she stumbled over her words a little bit, seemed a little bit nervous, and now looking back, I totally understand why. Because that's whenever she told me that she had been studying something a little bit different, and that she started to think that maybe, just maybe, when Jesus came on his mission to save the world, that he actually did save the world. Well, okay, well, yeah, of course, he did what he did, and he offered us all salvation, and now we've got that if we choose to take it. And she says, "No, that's not exactly what I mean. I mean that he was actually 100% successful in his mission." Okay, I'm not understanding. Where are you going with this? Of course he was successful. Who's going to say that Jesus was a failure? But what do you mean by he was 100% successful? And we just elaborated on that for a little bit until it became clear to me that she was saying that nobody goes to hell. Well, I got upset by that. I stood up and paced around the room and said, "Kim, what are you talking about? I mean, we've went to church together since I was a teenager. I would have been in my early 30s at this point, and we've gone to the same church. We've read the same Bible. How are you all of a sudden coming up with this? Jesus is 100% successful and nobody goes to hell. What are you talking about right now? I mean, you cannot possibly believe this, right?" I was so bent out of shape. I told her, I said, "Well, okay." She gave me 3 or 4 verses to read, and she gave me a tape from some guy that was supposedly taught this stuff, and I said, no, I'm not going to listen to some other guy. I mean, if you're right, then all these things that I've learned from other men in church are wrong, and now you want me to listen to this other guy? No, I don't need that. I will read the 3 or 4 verses that you gave me, but after that, I'm going to study for myself, and I'm going to write you a 3 to 5 page essay on why you're wrong, because what you're saying just sounds so dangerous right now. I mean, my life's been dedicated to saving kids from hell. I mean, not me saving them, but definitely teaching the message, because wouldn't less teenagers be saved if I didn't do any of my work? I mean, if all you youth pastors out there just quit today, what would happen? Would more people go to hell or not? I mean, I think that most of you would answer that work is important. And if that work is important, then it's because people would go to hell if you did not do that work. So I'm bent out of shape. Well, that night I went to my room, and I don't even remember what verses. I know Romans 5:18 was one of them, but she gave me a handful of verses, and I remember reading them, and I remember thinking, I mean, if you just pause this video and go read Romans 5:18 right now, and put everything else out of your mind that you've ever learned at church, and just read that, and maybe read it like 10 or 20 times, and try to get the point of that one verse. And of course, a lot of people would say, yeah, you're reading it out of context, and that's what I said that night. I said, well, I mean, if this was all that I read, well then, all right, I see why she's confused. So then I went from there, and I read her other verses, and I thought, okay, I get it. She's cherry-picked a handful of verses, or maybe she heard them from this other preacher, and now she's very confused. So I then knew exactly where to turn in my Bible. And so I pulled out my Bible, and actually I used the Bible on the computer in those days. I remember flipping through the computer Bible and finding the verse that I knew would prove her wrong. And I don't even remember what that first verse was, but as I was reading it, I remember thinking, well, for the sake of proving that she's wrong, this verse doesn't quite land on its own. And I even backed up and read the whole chapter and thought, well, that's not quite as clear as I remember it being. But I know there's another place. I'll flip over to there. So I flipped over to the next place, and again, it wasn't perfectly clear that I was going to be able to use that verse to hit a home run and prove her wrong. Well, I spent about 3 hours that night in my Bible, and I remember being a little frustrated at the end of the night, but I had to shut it off. I had to go to bed. I had to get up and go to work the next morning very early. So I shut it down, and I said, tomorrow I'll come back, and then I'm going to prove that she's wrong. Well, I spent 4 hours the next night, 5 hours the next night, 6 hours the next night. This is no kidding. 5 to 6 hours every night after that for quite some time. And long story short, I came to a completely different conclusion. I came to see that the fear that I carried was never supposed to be part of the message. Also, that the old covenant was actually the thief that came to steal, kill, and destroy in John 10:10. And that Jesus came to end that old system of fear. I mean, that was the point of the new covenant, was to end the old system. In Matthew 11, Jesus says, come to me, all you who are weary and heavy burdened, and I will give you rest. But I always wondered, how could I rest when the people that I loved were in danger? How could I carry an easy yoke when I was terrified for them? What I didn't realize was that fear itself was the very thing that Jesus came to end. And not just for me, but for all of them too, and for you too. You see, the end times were not about an end coming here in the near future where the church gets raptured away and all the sinners left on earth are going to be in utter chaos. No, the end times were actually about the end of the old covenant. Hebrews 9 verse 26 says it well, but he has appeared once for all at the culmination of the ages to do away with sin by the sacrifice of himself. At the culmination of the ages, that's at the end, when all things finally came to a head, and Jesus died on the cross, securing the new covenant. That was the end. That was the end times. In Matthew 24, he actually tells them that this generation standing right here in front of me will not pass until all these things get accomplished. You see, there's no more punishment left to fear, because the judgment that we've all been dreading for some time, that actually happened at the cross, and Jesus took upon himself the sins of the entire world. He felt that death blow at the cross. That was our punishment, and he took it for us, not as an offering to us to say, okay, well, I took it, and if you decide that you want to give it to me, well, then give it to me and I'll take it. But if you decide not to, well, then I'll let you carry that burden yourself. I'll let you go to hell. I mean, that's what we were taught, but that's not at all what happened. You see, I believed that judgment was coming in the near future. And if you're watching this, you might have believed that as well. But in John 12, Jesus says, now is the time for judgment. Now the ruler of this world will be cast out. But if I'm lifted up, I will draw all to myself. Draw all what? It doesn't say men. The word men was added later. But it says, I will draw all. Well, the subject of that was judgment. So I will draw all judgment unto myself. Some people say all of creation, because all means all. Well, that's great. When Jesus went to the cross, he took upon himself all of creation, all of our fears and doubts and unbelief. He took all of that with him and died. And because he represented all were in him when he died. So when he rose again, we were all given new life. The more I studied, the more I realized that this story is so much more beautiful than I ever imagined. There's so much more that I want to share. You know, I didn't walk around for the majority of my life feeling afraid or feeling heavy burdened. It actually just felt like day to day, like I just didn't know how much I was actually holding on to until I actually got past it. Once I got past that in 2007, then I began to feel the weight come off. I mean, 10 pounds at a time just coming off every single day from all the things that I was learning. And now looking back, I can see, holy cow, the difference between how I lived pre-2007 and how I've lived after that, knowing that Jesus took everything, and that even if I punched him in the face, even if I kicked him and mocked him and beat him and looked him in the eye and told him that I hated him, that it wouldn't matter because God loves us so much. What did he do that day of the cross? They did beat him. They did punch him. They did spit in his face and tell him that they hated him. And what did he do? He was ever forgiving and ever loving all the way to his death. That's the real Jesus that I've come to know and love. And I'm convinced that you love God or hate God, he's included you. I remember being in college, I was studying computer-aided drafting, AutoCAD, and I was really good at it. But the whole time that I was in college, the thought kept crossing my mind, why am I here? Why am I learning to make more money whenever I don't need money? What I need is to be helping people get saved. I need to be teaching people about the Bible, because everywhere I looked, all over the college campus, these people are going to hell. I mean, I hear their conversations. I know what they're doing after school. And if they don't change their ways, I mean, somebody's got to tell them. And so why am I here learning how to do computer-aided drafting whenever I should be in Bible college? I should be really sharpening my skills and helping people to get saved. I mean, think about it. If Jesus had already done that work, and if he had already secured our ticket to heaven, and there was no such thing as hell, which I would love to show you one of these days in a future video, well then, that must mean that I wasted a whole lot of time and energy and grief over worrying about things that had already been taken care of, simply because I misunderstood the truth. I couldn't even just love people. Like every person that I had in my life, every friend, I was always working them, always finding an angle. I mean, that notebook that I kept at the boat factory, I would not only take notes for sermons, but I would also write down different friends that I was thinking of, and I would try to think, you know, is there something that I could say to them Is there a way that I could pitch this that would get them to come to church? Like, just always an angle, never just loving to be loving. But I mean, I suppose that if hell were real, it would be extremely loving to always have an angle, always trying to get somebody there. But that's definitely not a light and easy yoke. Or at like a concert or a baseball game. I remember going to a baseball game and there's, I don't know, 3,000-4,000 people around. And I remember looking around and thinking, well, this is fun. I mean, I'm outside, the sun's shining, we're playing baseball, the announcers coming across the speakers, and the music always playing. Like, baseball games are exciting. I don't watch baseball on TV or anything. I don't follow anybody, but going to a live game, that's just so fun for me. But I would look around the crowd and think, out of 5,000 people here, 4,500 of them are going to hell. And that just took the joy out of almost every big event like that. Even at Christian rock concerts, I would look around the room and say, yeah, I wonder how many fake Christians are here. I wonder how many of them are going to go to hell. I couldn't even have peace at a Christian concert. So when I finally let go of the idea of hell, whenever I did that study and looked up every single verse that had hell in it or anything related to hell, oh my gosh. When I discovered that it wasn't even in the Bible, I mean, the weight that came off, like, it took months for me to actually feel, oh my gosh, it was so life-changing. I don't even know how to describe the feeling that I have today compared to what I had before then. I mean, if you've carried that same fear for people that you love, I mean, can you blame yourself? You were taught this story, you were trying to love people, but that fear was never the gospel. That fear was never the good news. The new covenant was supposed to bring peace, not terror. How can you simply love people freely whenever you have this constant fear that those that you love might not be living their life the right way, might end up in hell someday? Always pointing out the different sins of the other people, or at least rehearsing them in your head and making sure that you don't do the same things. Constantly wondering, is the once saved always saved the truth, or should I stop every night and pray and confess my sins just to be sure? That system of fear, it hurts too many people. It's painful. It causes people to lose sleep. And I would love to help you find something different. And that's why I'm creating this channel, because you don't have to live under that shadow anymore. The gospel, the good news, is peace. The system of fear, that ended a long time ago. And if that resonates with you, if that fear has been there way too long, well, I hope you'll subscribe and walk this journey with me. You see, you are already treasured, and the people that you love too. Let's explore that freedom together.